I want to start off with a thought question, and it has to do with how men meet challenges, because we all have life challenges. The question is, what has been the success rate of willpower in your life? Willpower in your marriage, willpower in your business, willpower in your parenting. What's been the success rate of willpower? Just anybody. And why? You might say, my whole life is willpower. I'm a willpower monster and you guys are wimps, and it's fine. But just tell us a little bit about the function of willpower. I forgot to say this. I know you don't know each other and you're all shame-based. So raise your hand and say, I know a guy with a struggle in that area, not me, but I want to share about this. My friend of mine, I'll go pray for him. So talk about these other guys. But willpower, how's it work for you? 50-50. 50-50. That there's some benefit and there's some ways it doesn't really get it done. Very good. Good. Somebody else. Yeah. Seems to work in the short run, but it doesn't work in the long run. Yeah.
It used to be maybe 90% of my life, now more like 50.
Move from 90 to 50. You know where I found it, since I study, most of my life is studying high performers, especially alpha males. Do you know what the success rate of a New Year's resolution is, which is the willpower consummate? You know what the success rate is? It lasts around 3 weeks. So that's less than 10% of the time, whether it's, I'm going to finally stop eating, too many Oreos, or I'm going to turn my Nordic rack into a Nordic track or whatever. I'm going to have more quiet times. It lasts about 8% of the year. And the reason for that is the failure of willpower. So what I want to talk about is a model I have that I work with high performers on what God says about success, because we all want to succeed. And it's just called the growth model. And if you have your handout, I'm going to talk about a reality that's come out. How many of you guys went to the breakout I did yesterday on the entitlement cure? How many of you did that? Okay. I'm a real fan of neurobiology and neuroscience, and the reason I believe in neuroscience and study it all the time is because it basically, when you study neurobiology and the way our brains work, God gets the credit. The research is overwhelming that all this stuff that it says about the way we're wired, the way we function, the way we relate, the way we act is determined by so many neural pathways and parts of our brain. And it shows us that all the things the Bible says about relationships and success, same stuff. That God finally gets the credit, and we're finding so much stuff about attachment and vulnerability and motivations and relationships. And one of those things that I spend most of my time on is understanding the character of a high performer. And you see in the definition you have in the handout, I have a definition of character which is kind of very basic. It's called that set of capacities required to meet the demands of reality. The idea being that when we think about character, we think, somebody that doesn't cheat, and somebody that doesn't do drugs, and somebody that goes to church, has good values, and those are all important things. But as a psychologist, character has a very different meaning. It means your innards. It means the entire structure of who you are. And here's the cool part of the research, is that we're finding out now that people who have character, what we call in my world integrated character, are succeeding at a higher level in life's most basic functions, relationship, marriage, parenting, career, than people who do not have integrated character. So now we're finding out for the first time that there is a metric to working on yourself, not just because of, it's a good thing to do and God says it and I'm supposed to be healthy, but health now creates performance. A friend of mine, Patrick Lencioni, you might know him, he wrote The 5 Dysfunctions of the Team and The Advantage. That's what he's concluded. If you've got organizational health, it's just like physical health. If you do the healthy things, performance happens. So God sort of gets the credit again. So, you see in your handout, I have a model called the Tree of Character. I'm just going to draw the thing we're going to be returning to today, which is I want you to look at ourselves as this is our life. And pardon my lack of artistic stuff. This looks so light. Is it even seeable? Is this thing... Go black? All righty. By the way, this is the next step past PowerPoint. We're really excited about this. We're unrolling it for you guys. You take a surface here, and then you get this thing here, and you can edit it and change it. And Bill Gates and I are in negotiation. We just want to bring it to you. So excited. Not any better, is it? A little bit better? All right. That this is who we are, and all of us have things we want to accomplish in life, and I'm going to call them the three fruits. This is going to be an apple tree, the three fruits of life. And I'm going to talk about the things we want to get. But first, what I'm going to do is to give you one of my favorite Bible passages that explains where we're going to go with this, because I got this from not only people study, but Bible study. And that passage is in Luke 13. And it's one of Jesus' parables, not a well-known parable, but a highly, highly powerful one. And what it says is there was a tree that was not bearing fruit. And the owner, the gardener, went to the owner of the fruit of the tree and said, "It's not bearing fruit." And the owner said, "Cut it down. Why should it take up the earth?" Now, in the parable, the owner is God, the righteous judge, saying, "These people don't have any fruit, so I'm going to righteously and fairly get rid of them." And then the gardener, who is obviously Jesus the advocate, our advocate, comes to the owner and says, "Well, before you do that," he says, "let me dig around here in the soil. And as I dig around in the soil," meaning I'm going to add, air and water and nutrients and elements that it doesn't have, "as I begin to do this, let's see if the fruit grows and if it becomes fruitful. If it does, leave it alone. If it doesn't, cut it down." Now, obviously, he's talking about the kingdom and us, but it's also a very, very powerful metaphor for personal growth. This is kind of like what I spend my whole career doing, is working with this metaphor, because it works in every area of life, from the anecdotal side to the research side to the theological side. This works. So, from that passage, the way I look at it, high-performing males have 3 P's in their life, and I'm just saying the letter P to stand for something, and it's easy to remember. The first P is the P of my personal life. Now, my personal life is everything inside my skin, right? Just those things that are a part of me. And our personal lives have 2 aspects to them. They have to do with our behavior first, and they have to do with our emotions. That's what's inside my skin, my behavior and emotions. I want to get good fruit in my behavior. I don't want to have a bad habit. I want to be disciplined to get things done. I want to wake up in the morning, have my quiet time, drink my coffee, be nice to my wife, not eat too much. I want to have good habits. I don't want to have bad habits like drug addiction, drinking too much. I don't want to get involved in porn. I want to have good habits. That's behavior. And I also want to have good fruit in the area of emotions. I want to be healthy emotionally. I don't want to be clinically depressed or have an anxiety disorder or a panic disorder or angry outburst or guilt or shame. I want to have what psychologists call circumstance-appropriate emotions. When I'm sad, I should feel sad. And when I've had a loss, I should feel lost. When somebody's trying to take away my life or my time, I should get angry. That's appropriate. I should get anxious when my car's bust a tire. Where'd you get those? Thank you. That's good fruit. Thank you. So those are the personal aspects. I want good fruit in those things. I don't want bad fruit. That's one way I measure success in life. The second P has to do with the people in my life. How's this blue doing? I'm kind of a blue guy. Should I go back to black, or was that okay? Okay. There are lots of people in my life. We've got 93% of NCS guys are married, or if you're not married, you're dating, and you shouldn't do both at the same time. We found out that it doesn't really work in life. So you got marriage, you got your kids, you've got the friends in your life, your family, and I want to have good things happen in my key relationships in two fundamental areas. Just like personal is behavior and emotions, people has to do with, can I be vulnerable with them? You know, New Canaan society is based on vulnerability. I've been on the board for many years because I believe in that concept and I love what they do. Do I have relationships where I can just unpack it and still be loved and not be condemned? And also, can I solve problems? I want to be able to hash it out with people and be direct and not walk on eggshells and worry about people. That's called conflict avoidant behavior. I don't want to have conflictual relationships where I'm just so afraid that I'll upset you, so I'm always being careful. I want to say, hey, I really got bugged by what you said, or they can say that to me and good things happen. So I want to have great relationships where I'm vulnerable, I can solve problems, and I want to have great behavior and feelings. And the third P is performance. And performance means that all of us are created by God to do things. We have tasks and missions and that sort of thing, mainly in several areas. One is in career. I want to have a good career. I want to know my gifts. I want to know my mission. And career, gifts, mission, and I want to know what my service is. So good work ethic. I know where I'm going. I know where I'm going in life. All the doing aspects of life. I don't want to be stuck in my career. One thing that I work with sometimes in leaders who will say, you know, I know I'm a 12-cylinder Lamborghini and I'm working on 9 cylinders. Something's wrong. The world looks at me and goes, way to go. You're doing great. You got no problems. But I know it deep in my heart. There's 3 or 4 cylinders I'm not hitting, and I don't know why I'm not optimizing. That's a performance issue. Let me ask you guys a question. If your behavior is okay and you don't have bad habits, pretty decent habits, your emotions are not you're not in trouble with them, you got great relationships where you're vulnerable and you can solve problems, and you like your career, gifts, your mission, and your service, what kind of life is that? How would you describe that life? Whole? I would agree with whole. What else? Wonderful. Balanced. Yeah, it's fruitful. It's sort of like in a post-Genesis 3 world, it's really as good as it gets. Now, by the way, if you're an outline person, I just went over the whole second part. Some of you gentlemen handed that nice guy a handout. So let me talk about this, because this is where alpha males get stuck. And I've been stuck many years. It's taken me a long time, and I think I figured it out. I've got a lot good things happen as a result. When these aren't working, you know what we do? We yell at the fruit to get better. My wife and I live in Southern California. And so we got a little apple tree in our backyard, not like you guys do. Everything's smaller, right? We got this apple tree, and a lot of times the apples will be like scrawny and dry. And so I don't like that, right? I want to cut some apples up for my breakfast. So I go out and I say, hey, you suck. You're scrawny and dry, and you need to get fat and luscious because I need to have you for breakfast. Get big, get luscious now. As a presidential candidate would say, get huge. Now, push the metaphor with me a second. What would any self-respecting apple say to an owner that was screaming to get good? Say that again. Well, if you want me to be big, it's not me. I want you to dig around here into the soil. I'll give you luscious, but you've got a problem. You don't have enough calcium or nitrates or whatever. And that's the problem. That's the problem of the failure of willpower. And what we do is we put our head down, which is not all bad. It's probably not 50% of success. It's probably 20%. And I work harder, and then I give out. Do you realize, guys, that if willpower worked, if screaming at the fruit worked in my life, I'm going to lose the weight. I'm going to be nicer to my spouse. I'm not going to get disconnected. I'm not going to have ADD anymore. I'm going to be a focused person, a loving person. Do you realize if that really worked, that the Bible would have ended in Exodus 20? You bibliophiles, what happened in Exodus 20? The 10 Commandments, where God said, here's the way to treat each other, and I'm checking out, that's it, and that's all there is. If that worked, that's all he would have done. But 2/3 of the Bible is written about the failure of us to do the right things and have good fruit. 2/3. Because there's a fruit problem. So, let me give you kind of an overview, and I'm going to allow about 10 minutes for questions, because this is sort of lends itself to questions. Of the three predominant nutrients that fill that soil up to help us be healthy and have great lives. And I'll just give some stories that kind of tie this in. The first one is a thing called grace. Grace is one of the additives, one of the nutrients to the soil. Can anybody tell me their definition of grace? It's a wonderful word, and we love it, and we believe it. Unmerited favor is a great one. What else?
Receiving something I don't deserve.
Receiving something I don't deserve. Theologians have been sort of answering that for many years. I have a very basic understanding of it, or just for practical purposes, that God is for me. Even if I'm wrong, He's on my side. He doesn't want to condemn me. He's for me. Grace means God's for me. Now, there are two ways that we get grace. The first is from what I call the vertical. You know, God gives His grace to us through prayer and the Bible and the Holy Spirit and, just us being with Him. That's the vertical part. But the Bible speaks just as much about the horizontal part. If the vertical is with God Himself, the horizontal part is people. And this is where Christian alphas really, really struggle. And this is why I love NCS. Because the Bible teaches over and over and over that God created a system where He is not enough. It is not good that man be alone. Guys, that's not a marriage passage. That's a people passage. God set up a system where we're incomplete and don't have the nutrients we need, simply going to the vertical. And I work with so many guys, and I'll say, how's your life? How are your needs? And they'll go, I've got all kinds of needs, but everything's great. Why? Because I've got a great God and a great wife and a Labrador Retriever. And they all three know my weaknesses and my needs and my fears and my passions. So good that I've got God and a great wife and my Labrador Retriever. And I'll say, I'm sorry for all three. Because you're overwhelming one of them. I mean, the lab's got to do what you say, because that's what labs do. And God will. But you're probably overwhelming that spouse. If she's the only human with skin on that you're unburdening yourself to. And every time I give that talk to couples, a couple of wives will come up later and say, oh my gosh, thank you. I love that guy, but can you tell him to get a thing called a friend or something? Because he's not vulnerable with anybody but me, and I'm a little overwhelmed. But it's when we experience grace, and I talk about it from 1 Peter 4:10, where Peter says that we are the stewards of God's manifold grace. We, people, are the stewards of God's grace. What I realize is guys don't know how to give grace to each other. We don't ask for it and we don't give it. We ask for wisdom and we give wisdom. We ask for advice and we give advice. How many of you have had your wife say, I love the advice you give me some more? Because when I've had a bad day, I need you to disciple me, and please give me more things like, you should get up early and get more discipline. Don't your wives just love that? No, they hate it when you do that for a good reason. It's because that's not what you need and not what you need to receive and give. I'll give you a story about that. I have there's a family that my wife and our kids hung around with all their lives. We just kind of grew our families up together. And went to go see them for a visit. And one of the gals, I'll call her Susie, she was 20, 21, and she said, can I talk to you? I mean, I knew her since birth. I said, sure. She says, I've got some problems. I said, well, tell me about it. We're at this little retreat. She said, I'm having some struggles. I am a senior in college with a communications major. And I said, I'll pray for you, because the market wasn't good for that. She said, also, my boyfriend and I broke up. And I thought he was the guy. I was really in love with him, and I thought he was it, and it's not working. I'm very sad and kind of heartbroken and kind of confused. I said, gosh, I had no idea, Sue. I'm sorry to hear that. She said, well, that's not all. And I said, what? She said, I don't know if I believe in God. I said, well, what happened? She said, I don't know. I'm just rehashing everything. I don't know if it's my faith or my parents' faith. I just don't even know who He is anymore. I'm just not sure I get it. And so it's a tough time. And I had so much compassion, because I remember the 20s. And they were not fun for me, that angst-ridden time of, is the right major and relational breakups and things having to do with your faith. Anybody else have a struggling 20s? The rest of you that didn't raise your hand, you're the reason we did. So I said, I'm sorry, so sorry, what can I do? She says, you can fix my mother. I said, what? She goes, fix my mother, it'll really help. I said, what? What's that got to do with this? She said, it's the way she handles this. I said, how does she handle it? She says, every time I try to open up about the college problem or the boyfriend problem or the spiritual problem, my mother says, Sue, listen to me. You're a Christian, and you're smart, and you're pretty. Feel better! I said, that sounds lame. She goes, tell me about it. It's really lame. Does it help? She goes, no, it doesn't help. I said, so what do you do? She said, well, I just ignore her. I said, well, I would too. I said, so I bet your dad, oh, my dad and I are fine. We talk all the time, and I can talk to him, so go fix her. I said, okay. So, when you're at reunions and stuff, you grab people to have those deeper conversations at little places in the house, the backyard where the swing is, or the kitchen, or the upstairs bedroom, or to get away, right? So I grabbed her mom and I said, let's go to the backyard swing, let's talk. I said, your daughter's really struggling. She goes, tell me about it. I said, no, it's bad. She's got lots of problems. She goes, I know. I said, she's got a God problem and a boyfriend problem and a major problem. She says, I know. You need to fix her. Can you do the math right there? I said, I'm off the clock. I mean, this is vacation, and here I am. I said, well, what do I need to fix? She says, well, fix her because she needs to feel better. I said, well, she tells me that you tell her she's Christian, smart, and pretty, feel better. She goes, I know. Fix her so that she can take in God's wisdom and feel good about it. I said, so you want me to have her say she feels good when you say you're Christian, smart, and pretty, feel better? She goes, yes. She's kind of linear, if you know what I mean. And whenever you get a very linear person that's kind of emotionally disconnected, you got to stop being linear because they'll out-linear you. Is that a word? They'll out-linear you. So I always switch to a story because stories get to somebody below the surface with a linear. I said, let me look at it this way with you. Your daughter fell down a well, 40-foot well. And the bottom of it is the well, the bottom of no boyfriend and no God and no job. And it's overwhelming and it's scary and it's awful. And she's kind of in a form of hell. It's awful. It's dark. It's wet. It's cold. And she needs help. And you come to the top of the well and look down, and the sun is shining where you are, and the clouds are kind of coming around. There's pink ponies and all this kind of stuff. And you go down and you lean over and you say, sweetheart, you're Christian, smart, and pretty. Come on up. Remember Bob Barker? Come on up. And nothing happens. However, your husband, her dad, stands at the top of the well and jumps in. Swan dive down to the bottom of that well. And when he does that, he picks up your daughter and he holds her. And he says to her, it's really scary down here, and it's damp, and it's overwhelming and confusing. It's awful. It's awful. And I've got you. I've got you. And I'll keep you here with me until we figure out how to come out. And that's why she listens to him and not to you. And my friend says, you're telling me to jump in the well. I said, I am. You're a mom, you're a leader. I'm telling you to jump in the well. She goes, that is so unnatural for me. It is so hard for me because I'm an encourager. I'm an encourager. And I said, we need more encouragers in this world. I'm glad you're an encourager, but you've got your sequencing wrong. She was a believer, so I could use Bible verse. I said, you've got your sequencing wrong. When you go to John chapter 1, verse 14, John's describing the character of Jesus, and he said he came full of two things. Anybody remember what he came full of in John 1? He came full of grace, and he came full of truth. And if you study the Greek, the syntax and order are important. It doesn't say he came full of truth and grace. He came full of grace, and he came full of truth. The implication being that in order for any of us to metabolize the value of feedback and wisdom and Bible verses and all that stuff, they've got to be able to have grace first. You and I can't metabolize truth unless there's grace first. Has anybody in this room ever been truthed by somebody without grace? What was your emotional experience? Even if they were right, some kind of challenge or feedback or, some kind of a confrontation, even if they're right on about your screw-ups, what was your emotional experience of receiving truth without grace? Anybody? Screw you. That's the theological response. Screw you. What else?
I don't need you around.
I'm distancing from you. And for some of us, it's, maybe you're right, maybe I should be condemned, and we go really bad and we turn in on ourselves. So I told her, you're fine, but she's got to have you in the well with her. She said, okay, I'll do it, because she was a good mom. I said, great. So I checked in on her about 6 weeks later, talked to the gal. She said, Mom and I are great, everything's good. And I talked to the mom, she said, we're fine. And that changed the course of everything. Here's my challenge for you. Don't think right now, because this talk could lend itself to guilt, and that's not my intent. Don't think about right now of all the people that you're advising or encouraging without listening. Just hold on to that for a second. You'll get to that. Think about you in the well with a behavior that you're not really happy about, or emotions that you're struggling with, or relational problems where you can't be vulnerable and you're starting to feel alone, or there's some relationship you just have these chronic bad, I call them toxic dances between you that you're never solving with a toxic dance, or something's wrong with the career. Who's in the well with you? Or do you have a lot of great advice givers and encouragers who want to stand at the top of the well and tell you, get it together because Romans 8:28 is true and Jesus is the victor. Don't worry about it because he won. Look, I read the Bible too. We do win. Revelation 22, we do okay. But there's a lot before that the Bible talks about that we ignore, mainly because people are afraid of the negative stuff. Most of us that are afraid to get in the well with somebody and just say, tell me more about it. How does it feel? I'm with you. And I need you no more. Most of us are afraid we have two fears. One is if I jump in the well with you, I'll jump into my own well, and I've got stuff I've never felt and dealt with, so I'll just keep encouraging you. And the other is because I don't know how to say this the right way, we're kind of codependent with God, and we feel like we've got to keep his name right, and so for us to say, that's really a tough time, we might be saying, well, God's not really solving your problems, so I've got to tell you that he is solving the problems. We rescue God. God doesn't need that. He doesn't need me to say, by the way, it's all going to be okay, because he's pretty strong. So my first challenge is, who's in the well with you, and do you have those people? You don't need many people. Concept I use is called a life team. You need somewhere between 3 and 10 people. If you can get 3 and 10 people with this who get in the well with you, and with my life team, I do those 8-minute windshield talks. Just between the car and home, I'll just call on my friends and I'll say, I just need to vent. No, I know you're a smart guy, you really do good in business, but I don't need advice. He says, go. I'll say, well, something happened today with my kids or with my marriage or something, and I just need to say, without filtering, how bad it went, and I'll finish, and he'll go, that sounds awful, tell me some more, and I'll tell him some more, and he'll go, I'm really sorry, that's horrible. And I'll say, okay, thanks, I got to go. Because I know what to do. I mean, if it's complicated, if it's a financial algorithm, I'll figure it out, or with somebody. Most of the time, we just need somebody to vent to, and that's the grace part. The second ingredient is truth. Because it's not just about grace, it's also about the truth. Now, as high-performing males, we know that life's good. We're all truth guys. We love the truth. And I want you to just kind of shout out some of the avenues of truth that we benefit from, because truth is really good. What are some of the avenues we use? What are some of the sources of truth that we benefit from? The Bible, God's 66 books, tremendous source of truth. What else? Sorry? Mentors, people that kind of know us and walk down the path with us, and they've kind of like been somewhere we haven't yet. Mentors in the Bible. What else? The Holy Spirit gives us information. Science. I'm a real research wonk. I love to, see what's out there. I love being online. One time I was online so long I reached the end of the internet. I'm just joking. So we all try to get truth, and we all need truth. And with truth, you've got to welcome it. Well, the Bible says you got to seek it, and you got to welcome it, and you got to use it. And that's what creates great character. That's why some people who have a problem here think about my behavior or my relationship, they just need to be around some Yoda figure or some great people that know Bible stuff or research, and you kind of get the answer. I'll give you a great example of this. A lot of my time is spent working with organizations. I work with high-performing people and CEOs and family business owners and NGOs. I was working with a company that was a manufacturing company and owned by a husband and wife team. And they hired me to come work with their team, their leadership team, CFO, CMO, CIO, CTO, and et cetera, and make them better. I said, sure. So I met them in a hotel room. Everybody's there, and the owners are there, and they said, hey, John's here. He's going to help you guys. You know a lot about your business than we do because we're at 30,000 feet, and they're more the field generals. So just tell him all the challenges, and we're going to go spend the day doing something else. So you're with him. So they all leave. And I'm there with the team. I said, great, nice to be here. Tell me about the challenges. And they said, no. I said, this is going to be a long day. I said, why won't you tell me the challenges? They said, because you're a narc. Can anybody tell me what a narc is? Remember Narcos on Netflix? Like that. You're a narc, and you're going to say all the things we're going to say about how they lead this company, and they're going to give us reprisal and beat us up and all that stuff. No, we're not telling you anything. I thought, I better scramble here. I said, well, it's a common problem. Let me make a solution. If you guys tell me how things are going, including how they're functioning as your leaders, and I get them to agree that they'll be accountable to me, so if I hear bad stuff, negative stuff about them from you, that I can go to them and say it. If they don't reprise about you or towards you, we're fine. But if they punish you, have a bad attitude towards you, are negative with you, reprisal, then they're accountable to me and I'll bust their chops. I'm just making this stuff up. I'm just trying to help. And they kind of did well, okay, so if they're mean to us for telling the truth, then you get to bust them. I said, yeah. They said, hold on a second. They did the huddle, Yeah, we'll do that. I went, okay, now I got another job. Guess what? Who I got to talk to now? Bosses. So I bring them in. I said, we got a challenge here. It's very common in industry. So everybody's always afraid of reprisal. So if they have some tough stuff to say, will you promise that to me and these people that if you reprise and have a bad attitude about the negative information, that I can bust you when I come down next month? And so Mom and Dad went, oh, hold on. Yeah, we'll do that. I said, great. So we got a deal. I said, so you're free to tell the truth. Oh, my gosh. It was like, I felt sorry for him. It was like an over-under 2020. It was like just scattershot. And they were saying everything about him. You guys, you're too critical. You don't give us clarity. You don't resource us. You're seagull leaders. Anybody know what a seagull leader is? Seagull leader is the one that's never there. And then, like every couple of weeks, they'll fly into the board meeting, and then they'll flap around and they'll deposit what seagulls deposit, and fly back out. And then somebody's left to clean that up. Anybody ever had a seagull relationship? I've had several of those. And they're just saying this stuff, and I'm feeling bad. I'll never forget this. The husband picks up a cocktail napkin, and he starts writing. And I said, what are you doing? He goes, what am I doing? I said, yeah. He says, this is homework. Everything that's true here about the things that the team is telling me is homework for me, and I'll have it fixed by the time you fly up in 30 days. Could have knocked me over with a feather. Now, let me ask you a respect question. If you've been on his team and he was a seagull and not clear and moody and didn't run his business right, and so you came to the meeting and your respect for him was a 4 out of 10, and you heard that statement, what do you think your respect would have been for him at that point? I'd probably say 7 because you're thinking, well, he's saying it. He hadn't done it yet. It was about a 7 for me, and then 30 days later I flew back and they left, and I asked the team, they went, did everything he'd say. No reprisal. He made all the changes. Went to my mind to a 9. Why is that? because this guy sought the truth, he welcomed the truth, and he used the truth. So my challenge is, as alpha males, high performing, do you surround yourself people and order them to tell you the truth? See, sometimes we'll tell people, we'll say, well, if they really want to tell me the truth, they'll let me know. But that's not the way our culture is. We have a truth-avoidant culture for lots of reasons. I found it very helpful to use the phrase PTSF, and I got that from my military friends. You know what it means? It means, do I have permission to speak freely? And I've had to do that with people in my life and say, just in case you're worried about it, you have total permission to speak freely. If you see me running my marriage off the cliff, or my parenting off the cliff, or my money off the cliff, or my self-care, or my spiritual life, you have to tell me. And so I get that from people. And when you get the truth, things get better. And I've seen so many people and companies and organizations and just people, when they've got enough grace in their life and people in the well, and they got enough truth tellers that are willing to say, I got some hard things to tell you, I love you, but you're really screwing up in your marriage, all of a sudden the fruit gets better, because that's how God makes it work. And the third ingredient in between the two is time. Time meaning a process of growth. In other words, for me to have enough of this ingredient and enough of this ingredient at different times and different types and sort of thing, I've got to allow these things to marinate. We live in an instant society, and a society that says, I want it now, it's got to happen right now. But the problem is, God did not create the growth process to be a microwave. It's an oven where we get baked, and we get lots of grace from Him and people around us, and we hear lots of truth, and we screw up and we try again, and we screw up and try again. The oven is a much better metaphor for God's process. You've got to be patient with yourself. If you've got a habit that you haven't kicked yet, it's not a time for condemnation. It's maybe I haven't gotten the right kinds of grace, or maybe there's some things I don't know. If you've got a relationship that's going south, be patient with yourself, because God's got time. And what I've noticed is that very high-performing people are very patient with themselves. They know there's a practice effect, and they'll learn these things over time. So that's kind of the model. There's lots of ramifications for this, but the big picture is most guys in this space of life that I know tend to not only have problems with receiving the truth, but have problems in telling the truth. We call that in my world conflict avoidant for lots of reasons. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. We don't want to discourage someone else. We don't want to alienate ourselves from other people. That's why Henry Cloud and I wrote 7 boundaries books, because we feel like the research and the Bible come together and say, I need to tell the truth to people and confront them and disappoint them sometimes, and that's what makes a really high-performing person. And so when I'm doing the CIS, autopsy on somebody's life because things aren't working, I'll go, are you receiving the truth? No, everybody's just kind of stroking me. Are you telling the truth? No, I don't want to hurt people's feelings. I say, okay, we've got a problem with truth. Or I'll come over here, I'll say, how's the grace you're getting? Well, I got God in my lab and my wife. Well, look at the other. And I'll find out they're around a bunch of advice givers or happy people, and nobody that gets in the well with them. And most of the problems, in some form or fashion, we begin changing this ingredient over time, these things get better. Get your mind off the fruit. The fruit's just there to measure things. It's just a measurement. What God wants is for you to build the character that comes up the trunk of this tree to here. So, it's a simple illustration, but I think it's profound in its implication for us as men. And it works. It works personally, it works organizationally. So, I wanted to allow time for any questions you have about this, because this is an 8-hour seminar, but I wanted to give us time to see the big picture of it. Any questions you have about it? Yes, sir.
In speaking about truth,
just for purposes of, did you guys hear what he asked? Okay, you guys, okay, let me summarize sir, if I can kind of summarize it. I get this on a personal level. How does this translate to the business or organizational level? Fair enough? Yeah, there are 2 alternatives to this. My experience as a consultant is probably 80% of organizations you can't do this talk with. You just can't, because there are reporting issues, there are direct reporting. How can you be that vulnerable with somebody that's writing your checks and looking at you on a developmental level and looking at, demotions or promotions? So I don't see organizations as the place to get these needs met. So solution number one to your question of organization is go, I'm going to try this one. Sorry. Number one is go outside. Go in, fight the battles, alligators around, but just make sure your life team is with your brothers and with your Bible study people and your mentors and your comrades in life. Get the ingredients outside, they pick you up and put you back together, and you go back to work the next day. The second one is that I've made a distinction between personal and professional vulnerability. NCS talks about vulnerability all the time. There's a difference between being able to be professionally vulnerable and personally vulnerable, and your organization may be able to handle the professional part. Let me give you an example. How was your weekend? Well, I don't know. My wife and I might get divorced. Is that professional or personal? That's personal. You might not be in the environment that can metabolize that. It's not bad about the environment. It just means they don't do that. How was your weekend? Well, I stayed up all weekend working on the report because I realized I cost us $250,000 last quarter, and I feel bad about myself. Is that personal or professional? Professional. And there's a real case to be said for healthy culture. I'm a culture guy. Professional vulnerability. I messed up the account. I was asleep at the wheel. I didn't give you guys clarity. It's been a struggle. I'll do better next time. There's a lot of cases in a healthy environment to be professionally vulnerable. Just don't cross the line into personal unless you have one of the unusual 20% of the organizations I talk about. Okay? So that's kind of the little picture. Somebody else? Yes, sir. That's good. So is the question, are you in the well with someone with you or somebody else in the well and you're with them?
Someone's in the well.
You're helping someone.
Yeah, you go down to help.
Now, you didn't cheat, did you? Because I told you not to think that. Okay.
That's true.
We went to helper mode. Oh, well, they've got to be in the well better. So don't forget you in here, okay? But it's a great question. So how long? Well, the main thing you've got to look at is when you look at like what makes people perform better, you got to look at stability and motivation. Like you see your spouse or a coworker or one of your kids, part of the function of the will is they're out of homeostasis. They're catastrophizing, they're afraid, they're upset, they're pissed off, they're scared. You got to hold them there till they're stable, till blood pressure goes down and, okay, I'm better now. You can tell when somebody stabilizes, just like a 2-year-old stabilizes. We might have a 42-year-old that needs to stabilize. But the second thing is they've got to be motivated because healthy people will go, thank you very much. I can't believe you spent the last 45 minutes being with me and just listening to me and containing me and letting me vent. I need to get to work. Now, there are some people, we call them dependent personality disorders, that would say, you got to be in the well with me till I'm 90. And just send out for pizza. And that person has a character issue because they're motivated not to achieve, but to be loved and supported. And so if their motivation's right and they go, thank you so much, they say, look, I needed that. That was the fuel I needed. I got to slay a dragon. You're fine. But if they hold on to the point that they're avoiding problems, then you have to start setting limits and saying, I can't be there as much as you'd like. Let's start talking about solutions. So look at their motivation and stability, and that tends to let you figure it out. Remember, you don't want to be enabling. I have a whole training on the 5 differences between supporting and loving somebody and between enabling somebody, because none of us know. So I've got these 5 things we can talk about them sometime, because otherwise you end up forever. Yes, sir.
I'm kind of stuck on the truth side, the truth issue. I remember in San Francisco, you gave us a talk in one of the breakouts on knowing who is who, whether it's a coach or...
The 7 key relationships.
And I'm thinking to truth, because some people you allow to speak in your life, and they're really not for that. I got an opportunity, and I'm going to tear them up, right? So
Yeah.
it's truth without grace. So, you know,
This was at the San Francisco conference 2 years ago?
yeah, or
Year and a half ago? Okay.
yes, yes. So that's seven.
The 7 C's of high-performing relationships.
Right. So I'm thinking that we have to be very careful to know those, because we can see truth from the wrong self
You mean as I am the dispenser of truth or as I'm the receiver of truth?
as I'm the receiver.
Okay, I gotta filter out who's for me and who's not for me. Absolutely. Yeah.
Because, I mean, you can get some truths that really just to blow you out of the water, and you feel like, oh my God, I'm broken, kind of thing.
Yeah, I want to be around people that'll shoot really straight with me, but they want me to win. And if their job is to make me look bad, that makes them look better, or they're just sort of a critical person because they never worked through their critical father and they project that on me, I don't need that. So I need people to go, I'm telling you something hard, it's surgery, go for it. That's what we need. Good. Yes, sir.
Could you talk about this conflict avoidance and how it applies to, I remember at that same seminar, you talked about don't assume fragility in the other. Assume you've been in the well with them for 6 months and it's time to deliver the truth. Why do we stop at that point?
Why we stop telling the truth?
Keep us from this, what would cause the conflict avoidance? It's some kind of fragility.
Yeah, you're talking about the concept of fragilizing, which I found so helpful for guys in business and guys with relationships and families. Great concept. It's called fragilizing. Use it. Fragilizing. Another I? Close enough. Fragilizing is a psychological discovery which is eminently biblical, which means I treat other people as brittle. I treat people in my life like if I was to sit down and say, you know, you got a booger in your nose, then I'm going to ruin your life, you're going to slit your wrist, you're going to have bad self-esteem, and all that, because we feel like people are so breakable that we walk on eggshells around anybody. Most of this has to do with a sense that that people can't handle the truth. Remember, Jack Nicholson? You can't handle the truth. That's what we feel. And what we find is that people are not fragile. Well, maybe 5% of the population's fragile. I mean, I'm a psychologist. I've seen fragile. I had a hospital program. I saw people with straitjackets that needed medication every hour, and the cops were after them. That's fragile, right? 95% of the people are not fragile. You know what they are? They're just reactive. They get upset, and they say, you don't like me. Can't you believe that? I thought you liked me, and you pick on me, and they have a little tantrum. People who have tantrums are not fragile. They're reactive. They're very adaptive inside. They're very strong and malleable inside. But we take these people and we go, no, you're fragile, and so I'll never tell you the truth. Sometimes you need to piss somebody off. Sometimes you need to get somebody out of comfort zone, because I've been helped by people that pissed me off and got me out of my comfort zone and kicked my butt, and I'm a better man for it, spiritually, emotionally, physically, in relation and career. So, what I always tell people is, try telling the truth and saying, I've given you a lot of holding and wealth stuff, and you still want me to mentor you 3 days a week at Starbucks at 6:30 in the morning? I think maybe you ought to do what I'm saying instead of just coming back. And they'll go, but I thought I'll be meeting you once a month from now on. Oh, abandonment issues. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's not abandonment issues. Maybe it's you just like sucking on the whole, water faucet here, and it's time to do what I'm saying because I've been giving you homework assignments you've been blowing off. If they're not taking the stuff you're giving them and doing anything hard out through life, you're enabling. They come back time after time. No, I didn't confront it. No, I didn't look for a job. No, I didn't do it with my wife. You're enabling the behavior. But if they come back and go, well, man, I tried what you said, and it kind of blew up, but I got better, I'm feeling stronger, stick with them. That's the fragilizing concept. Yes, sir. Can you speak up a tad, sir?
As far as the tree concept, what do you do when you are where you want to be and still don't feel satisfied spiritually?
When you evaluated your fruit and you said, I'm good in all 3 P's, but I don't feel satisfied? I might have a semantic problem, because to me, satisfaction is an emotional sense. And if all this good stuff happening, I have the emotion of joy and fulfillment, and God's with me, and I have meaning, and I found my place. So I feel like if I don't have that, then I would say I have an emotional problem. Maybe I can't sense God's presence, and I've got to spend more time with Him. Or maybe I'm emotionally detached from people I love, and I'm not letting their grace in. But I would see that as one of the emotional P's.
Because I feel like you still want more.
I'm supposed to want more. Yeah. But it's sort of like the whole construct of the leaders of, I'm happy where I am, but I'm also driving to something more. Like you go to Philippians, Paul says in Philippians, not that I've already achieved it, but I go upward for the cause of Christ, for the upward call of God. Yet I'm content in all things. I spend a lot of time in Philippians because we're supposed to be content with the love we got and the resources we got. Oh my gosh. But I'm supposed to be driving for more at the same time. So to me, that's a good thing. I never want to be so content I just start watching my navel or something. I want to be really pushing ahead. I think that's healthy. Well, guys, I know that there's a reception, and since there's going to be a lot of alcohol, you've been thinking about that already. So you're dismissed, and thanks very much, and have a great conference. God bless you.